Saving throws are a method of action resolution used by most effects that don't involve swiping at your foe with claws or smashing them with a hammer. It creates another system of attack and defense to let creatures be powerful in a variety of ways. It also allows for a wider variety of attacks. Rogue dodging too many of your fireballs? Try a blight and see how long they stay standing. In this video, I'd like to discuss how 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons implements their saving throw system, and why I think that it does a spotty job at keeping the math sound as the game progresses. First, I'd like to talk about how many saving throws 5e includes. They have a saving throw for each ability score, totaling to 6 different saves. I think that this decision is a mistake on multiple levels. Mechanically, it provides so many angles for attack that there's no way for most characters to defend against a given saving throw. It also punishes you for doing a very stereotypical D&D thing of having a dump stat. Suddenly, every martial character that has no reason to have intelligence is going to get eaten alive, literally, by mind flayers. Spells like Banishment almost feel like antagonistic additions from the developers, knowing that there won't be many characters interested in pumping charisma. Investing in boosting a saving throw has a significant opportunity cost, either during character creation or when choosing customization options like feats. Nobody in their right mind is going to spend a feat on int save proficiency. Even if they did, it's no guarantee that they're now +3 bonus instead of their -1 quote-unquote bonus will work against the psionic brain eaters. For int saves specifically, it also drastically affects animals differently than every other creature, considering ability scores can go as low as -5. The big dumb animals have basically no chance of ever passing such a saving throw. Wizards of the Coast at least had the foresight to let you keep your intelligence as a wild-shaped druid, likely for just that reason. Consider thematically what a saving throw is supposed to represent for a moment. A creature resisting some kind of harmful effect. There are some effects that have real-life analogs that are easy to translate, such as dodging explosions and withstanding the harmful effects of poison or disease. These represent your con and dex saves. The last is a bit harder to compare to real life, usually only popping up in situations where people are fearful or hysterical. Applying mental fortitude to magic and such, in general, doesn't require a stretch of the imagination. I'd even argue that a strength save is reasonable to help you resist effects that toss you around, like blasts of wind or the earth quaking underneath your feet. I ask you now, dear viewer, if charisma is supposed to represent how personable you are, what on earth is a charisma save? And why does it help to stop me from being banished to another plane? Oh, it's an effect that damages your sense of self. Again, banishment, why? You can make mechanics that don't make a lot of logical sense, as long as they serve an important mechanical purpose. The way that I see it, something like a charisma save serves the mechanical purpose of being nearly impossible to resist for a specific subset of fightery creatures. Intelligence, as I discussed before, suffers from a lot of the same issues. With only one intelligence-based class, with a handful of subclasses, very few creatures actually have proficiency, or the stat to resist such an effect. And what the heck is an int save supposed to represent? If intelligence represents how much you know, is it an overload of information? Again, you could include things that make less sense if they serve a mechanical purpose. But if they wanted people to fail mind blasts and banishment saves, they could have just made the DC a few points higher and not added an entire saving throw type. Both charisma and intelligence saving throws serve little to enhance the mechanics of the system, and only serve to spread your bonuses thin across your character. Not to mention, the kinds of things that you make said saving throws for could easily be attributed to the aforementioned mental fortitude, and thus be wisdom-based. If you think that having 6 saving throws is bad, wait till you see this. Most of the numbers in 5e are based off of a proficiency bonus, which is a number that slowly scales from +2 at the start to +7 at max level. Anything you are proficient in, skills, weapon attacks, saving throws, you add this number. It is coincidentally also part of the number that decides what the DC of an ability is. Keep that in mind for later. All classes have 2 saving throw proficiencies, with one usually being one of the common ones, Con, Dex, Wiz, and one being one of the more uncommon ones, Strength, Int, Charisma. With the exception of proficiency, ability scores, and a handful of class features, like Paladin's Aura of Protection feature, almost nothing adds to saving throws. If you are not proficient in a saving throw, then that means that your number is likely never going to change from levels 1 to 20. Early on, a typical uninvested saving throw is going to be around +2 for the common saves, and the average DC is going to be about 13. This means that once you factor in proficiency, you get around a 50-50 chance of an ability going off, going up or down a few points depending on what you're targeting and what with. These are workable numbers. Many effects with saving throws have some type of lesser effect on a pass, so something is still likely to happen on a pass. If things stayed like this from levels 1 to 20, I wouldn't be making this video. You remember how I said how proficiency works? A barbarian doesn't get dex save proficiency, but a wizard will always be proficient in their spell save DC. This means that at level 20, your barbarian will still likely have that +2 bonus. Meanwhile, the wizard has upgraded from DC 13 to DC 20 Fireball. Even with the advantage barbarian gets from Danger Sense, they will still only have a slim chance of passing that save. A 15% chance becomes a 28% chance with advantage. Less than stellar odds, considering Barbarian has a class feature that's supposed to make them good versus dex saves. Don't like using other classes as a comparison? Well, I'm sure there's no chance any DM has ever included a high-level magic users for their big bad evil guy, so you're probably right. But since you're a stickler, let's look at a CR 20 creature in Pit Fiend, a classic. Oh hey, their Fireball DC is 21. Make that a 19% chance for the Barbarian to pass their save. And if the Barbarian walks up to fight in melee, he also needs to pass a will save or be frightened. He doesn't get advantage on that one, and still no proficiency. 10% chance to not be frightened, assuming +2 wisdom. In 5e, the math is almost always in favor of the attacker, and it's not even close. The only exception is an equal level of investment and proficiency in the opposing stat. So a 20 dex rogue would have +12 to their dex save. Proficiency doesn't even net you a favorable chance to succeed on saving throws late game. A +7 whiz save versus a hold monster from a Pit Fiend is still only a 35% chance of passing. Almost a 1 in 3. I've been saying a lot of numbers, but what does this actually mean in practice? With the amount of absolutely devastating CC that gets thrown around in 5e, any caster with a 20 in their casting stat can handily subdue almost any creature without massively inflated stats like a Pit Fiend with something like Hypnotic Pattern or Hold Monster. It means that any singular enemy can never be a threat. Against the standard party of 4 adventurers, if only 3 of them have some type of CC, like a Stunning Fist, a Hold Monster, and an Eye Bite, that's lights out for your Beholder 9 out of 10 times. How does 5e remedy this? Well, for players, too bad so sad. get a spell that makes you immune, like freedom of movement. Yeah, this kind of solution, I think, is problematic all on its own. But for monsters, they just say, you can decide to turn X number of saves into a pass, with legendary resistance. While I'm not inherently opposed to the idea of powerful enemies having a reliable way to avoid being CC chained, this just makes a boss battle a race to burn through resistances with stunning fist spam or some other easily applied CC. And with how skewed saving throws can be, sometimes this could mean in as little as 1 or 2 turns. Consider this for a moment. There are no critical success rules for saving throws. If you get hit with a hold person from a pit fiend, and you have 10 wisdom with no proficiency, you are now paralyzed until it stops concentrating. Rules as written, you cannot roll a 21, so you're stuck forever. No self-respecting DM would ever enforce such a rule. No saving throw at all? Are you kidding? Why even come into play? Saving throw scaling is so poor in 5e that by using standard stat arrays and standard CR appropriate creatures, you can get completely unpassable saving throws without the mercy of a DM who doesn't want to inflict such cruelty on the players. I don't know about you, but I think I'd just leave a game if something like that ever happened to me. Now that I've thoroughly grilled 5e saves, let's talk about Aura of Protection. Aura of Protection strikes me as a very odd feature in the context of 5e's saving throw system. Clearly the developers wanted combats to go by incredibly quickly with how powerful and consistent spells are. They wanted offense to completely dominate defense, making proper tanking impossible. Even with characters that do have exceptionally high saving throws, chances are usually only probable that they will pass, somewhere in the 60% range. One of the few ways to buff saving throws is Bless, but Bless requires an action, it's concentration, and it's also consuming a spell slot. Its bonus is on average 2.5, making it essentially plus 15, spread across all 6 of your saving throws. These are some hefty bonuses, but it's also a steep requirement. Haste gives plus 2 to dex saves, as kind of a side thing, but again, concentration. And if it ends, you essentially lose a turn. So why on earth would Wizards of the Coast let one class in specific give one of the most powerful defensive features in the entire game as a passive aura that extends to nearby allies? It's not unreasonable for a paladin to get up to plus 5 charisma, making this buff twice as powerful at protecting as Bless does in the late game. It can collectively add up to plus 30 to saving throws to multiple creatures, again, spread across all of your saving throws. The only counterplay is to incapacitate the paladin. Too bad most of the deadly effects that either kill you or incapacitate you without dealing damage are saving throws. It's a natural shield against its own counterplay. How does an effect this powerful exist in the game? Especially with features like Indomitable being somehow a higher level feature per fighter. Honestly, this is a real question. If some kind of dev blog where they discuss Aura of Protection exists, I would love to read it. This feature is better than proficiency in saving throws, and it stacks with proficiency in saving throws. A late game paladin could easily have plus 14 to wisdom saves and a whopping plus 17 to charisma saves. If the devs are okay with creatures failing saves on a 19, how could they possibly also put a guy in the same game that can pass that same save on a 2? Is Paladin supposed to be a mandatory addition to every single party? I am not exaggerating when I say that outside of the straight immunity granted by high-level spells like Resilient Sphere or Sanctuary, this is far and above one of the most powerful defensive features in the entire game. Bear Totem might make you resistant to damage, but that helps very little when you're getting hit for double damage because you're paralyzed by a hold person. Not to mention, Rage is also a resource. Aura of Protection isn't. So many of the dangerous effects in the game are dependent on failing saves. Hypnotic Pattern, Hold Person, Banishment, to name a few. I remember playing 5e with a friend who, it was their first time playing, and he played a paladin. He felt like the most powerful part of his character was the fact that he could stand next to our wizard, as the wizard used his god powers to trivialize every combat. After looking more closely at the math behind saving throws, I can see why. With such a skewed saving throw system, the longer the game goes on, you have a few options. The first is to stay low level and accept that you don't get to play with all the shiny high-level toys. The second is to hope that your DM gives a lot of handouts, either from permanent buffs or from magic items. The last is you ignore the problems, advance to high level, and accept that everything is broken and you just have to wait for your turn to slap the paralyzed enemy next combat. Once you land a singular hold person / monster on an important target, the fight immediately ends. What level is hold person again? Level 2 spell? I'm sure you don't get that until super late game. Oh, you get it at level 3. Maybe the save system being a broken mess wouldn't be such a big deal if failing a save means you didn't get to play the game and now you take double damage and get automatically hit by everything. But alas, it is. Did you know that there's a wizard archetype that lets you change the type of saving throw of a spell? Changes its element too. Who would win? One orc chieftain or an int save disintegrate? If you played previous editions of the game, like 3rd edition, its derivatives, or 4th edition, you probably know that 3 saves is already a lot to prepare for, in addition to other defensive stats like AC, HP, and combat maneuvers. I'll have to do a video on that another time. To expect a character to endure 6 different types of saving throws that require proficiency to even have a chance to survive them later on in the game is completely preposterous. It turns the game into Rocket Tag, where whoever gets the broken guaranteed CC off first wins. Hypnotic Pattern doesn't have any counterplay if you just land it on every single enemy. Creatures don't get additional saves on subsequent turns. I could probably keep on pointing out silly spells all day from this game, but that's not the point. Even if the effects were tame, the fact that you have this saving throw system that guarantees that a certain subsection of creatures dominate and others get dominated under creates a power imbalance that makes for unsatisfying gameplay on either side. I can tell you from my experience playing Baldur's Gate 3, getting hit with a hold person is about the least fun thing you can experience. A close runner-up is having a boss enemy with all of these cool abilities, animations, etc., all this effort put into it, and then your sorcerer decides he doesn't get to play the game. He gets auto-crit, and he gets no actions. Baldur's Game 3 does its best to smooth over 5e's pain points, but there's only so much you can do with the system leaking at the seams on delivery. Not to toot my own horn, but in my game, NickNacks, I made the wild decision to let save DCs and saving throw bonuses both scale. Now, when you have a decent chance to pass an effect at low level, then change to max level, the odds don't change much. Now, most of the difference in saving throws between equal level creatures comes from their ability scores, and some other small bonuses that I give for thematic appropriateness. Barbarous fighter steens get a bonus to fortitude. Casters get a bonus to will. It all makes sense, and the math is relatively consistent. Just like with 5e, there are some outliers to numbers, but you're never going to get scenarios where you can even consider the possibility of a natural 20 being a fail on a relatively equal playing field. Only the most powerful of adventurers can bust out numbers like that against the weakest of commoners. If you like 5e's accessibility, then more power to you. But if these mechanics frustrate you, like they do for me, why not take a gander at NickNacks? I won't even make you pre-order any books just to read the rules. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to hear about a specific topic, leave a comment and I'll try to include it in a future video. Subscribe if you want to see it. I love talking about game design in general, but tabletop RPGs are my favorite. I have links for my Twitter, Discord server, and the OneNote document I've been writing my own TTRPG in the comments below. It's called NickNacks, and it's most similar to Pathfinder 1st Edition. I'm working on a website right now where you can see it in all of its glory. When I'm done, I'll post that link in this video too. I regularly post some of my favorite and latest stuff on both my Discord server and my Twitter. But until then, farewell, fellow gamers.